My name is Ethan Ward, and I should have known something was wrong when my bride-to-be insisted on having a backup plan for our wedding day. Not a backup venue or a backup caterer, a backup drama. The morning of September 15th started like any other wedding day in Millbrook, Maine. The leaves were just starting to turn, painting our small industrial town in shades of gold and crimson. I stood in the mirror of the Riverside Manor's groom's suite, adjusting my tie for the 100th time, when my best friend Mick knocked on the door. "You ready for this, brother?" Mick asked, stepping inside. He'd been my friend since high school, back when we both worked summers at the lumber mill. Now he ran a security consulting business, all muscle and street smarts wrapped in a cheap rental tux. "As ready as anyone can be to legally bind themselves to Lila Patterson," I said, trying to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. Mick caught it anyway. He always did. "Still having second thoughts?" I shrugged. "Not second thoughts, just, you know how she is. Everything's a test with her. Everything's about proving how much I love her." That should have been my first red flag. Hell, it should have been a parade of red flags with a marching band. But I was 38, owned a successful computer repair shop, and figured I was lucky to find someone willing to put up with my sarcastic commentary on life. Lila was beautiful, worked in PR for the city, and had that polished look that made other men jealous. What more could a blue-collar guy like me want? The ceremony was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. By 1:30, I was standing at the altar, watching our guests file into the rustic venue. Lila's parents, the Pattersons, took their seats in the front row, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. They'd never approved of their daughter marrying a computer repair man, as they always said it, like I fixed typewriters for a living. Mrs. Hanley, our nosy neighbor, waved at me from the third row. She was the kind of woman who knew everyone's business before they did, which in a town like Millbrook made her more valuable than Google. The music started. Lila's maid of honor, Riley, walked down the aisle first. Riley ran a wedding planning business and had been Lila's best friend since college. She was also the kind of person who thought manipulation was a valid form of communication. She gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes as she took her position. Then Lila appeared, and I had to admit she looked stunning. Her dress was some designer thing that cost more than I made in 2 months, her dark hair swept up in an elaborate style that probably took 3 hours to perfect. She walked down the aisle like she was on a runway, soaking up every admiring glance. The ceremony went smoothly until we reached the vows. That's when it happened. "If anyone has any reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever. Hold your peace," the minister said, clearly expecting silence. Instead, the back doors of the venue burst open. I object. Every head turned to see a guy in his early 30s striding down the aisle. He was tall, muscular, with a kind of artificially perfect tan that screamed gym membership and protein shakes. His name was Chad Ramsey, though I didn't know that yet. At the time, all I knew was that some random dude had just crashed my wedding. "Lila, you can't marry him," Chad announced, his voice carrying across the stunned silence. "What we have is real. You know it, and I know it." I looked at Lila, expecting to see confusion or anger. Instead, I saw something that made my stomach drop, a flash of calculation in her eyes, quickly replaced by what looked like genuine shock. I don't know who this is," she stammered, but her voice carried just a little too well, like she was projecting for the back row. Chad kept walking until he was standing right in front of the altar. "Don't lie, Lila. Tell him about us. Tell him about last month, about what you said about him." The guests were eating this up. I could hear Mrs. Hanley whispering furiously to her husband, probably already composing the story she'd tell at the grocery store tomorrow. I should have been angry. I should have been devastated. Instead, I found myself studying the scene like a puzzle. Chad's timing was too perfect. His dramatic entrance was too rehearsed. And Lila's shock looked exactly like the expression she practiced in the mirror when she was preparing for difficult PR meetings. "Security," Lila's father called out, but Mick was already moving. He stepped up to Chad with the kind of calm authority that came from his years as a cop before he went private. "Time to go, buddy," Mick said, not touching Chad but making it clear he could and would if necessary. Chad looked around the room, his eyes settling on me. "Ask her about the recording, man. Ask her why she needed to test you." Then he let Mick escort him out, but not before shooting Lila a look that was supposed to be longing, but looked more like a question mark. The minister, clearly out of his depth, looked at us expectantly. "Shall we continue?" I looked at Lila, who was now crying. Perfect tears that didn't smudge her makeup. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I have no idea who that was or what he was talking about. But I did. Not the details, not yet, but I knew exactly what Chad was talking about, because I'd been married to Lila for all of 10 minutes, and I already recognized her lies. "Let's finish this," I said, and we did. We exchanged rings, kissed, and walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, while the guests whispered and speculated. At the reception, everyone wanted to know about the mysterious objector. Lila played the victim perfectly, clinging to my arm and talking about crazy exes and stalkers. But I noticed things, like how Riley seemed more nervous than surprised, like how Lila kept checking her phone, like how she kept asking me how I felt about what happened, as if my reaction was more important than the incident itself. During our first dance, she whispered in my ear, "I'm so proud of how you handled that. You were so calm, so protective." "What did you expect me to do?" I asked. "I don't know. Get angry, maybe? 'Cause a scene? Some men would have. That's when I knew for certain. This had been a test. The question was, had I passed or failed?" After the reception, we went home to the house we'd bought together 6 months earlier. It was a modest 2-story place on Elm Street, with a garage I'd converted into a workshop and a basement where I kept my computer equipment and tools. While Lila was in the bathroom removing her makeup, I did something that would change everything. I checked her purse. Hidden in a side pocket, I found a small digital recorder. It was still running. I sat on our bed, holding the device, and felt something cold settle in my chest. She'd recorded my reaction to Chad's interruption. She'd wanted to capture my response for posterity, or for analysis, or for God knows what purpose. I turned off the recorder and put it back where I'd found it. When Lila came out of the bathroom, I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. "What a day," she said, climbing in beside me. "Yeah," I agreed. "What a day." She fell asleep quickly, but I lay awake thinking. In the morning, I'd start looking for answers. I'd find out who Chad really was, what Riley knew, and exactly what kind of test my new wife had put me through. But first, I was going to copy everything on her phone. The next morning, Lila left early for what she called a crisis management meeting at work. Apparently, the wedding crasher incident might affect her professional reputation. She kissed me goodbye and told me she'd probably be late getting home. "Take your time," I said, and meant it. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I was in motion. 20 years of running a computer repair business had taught me a few things about digital forensics, and I was about to put that knowledge to work. First stop was Lila's laptop. She'd left it charging on the kitchen counter, probably figuring I'd respect her privacy. Under normal circumstances, she would have been right. But recording your husband's reaction to a staged wedding crash isn't exactly normal circumstances. Her password was our wedding date. How romantic. Within minutes, I was browsing her email, her social media accounts, and her cloud storage. What I found made my coffee taste like ash. The emails started 3 weeks before the wedding. The first one was from Riley. Are you sure about this? The wedding thing seems extreme, even for you. What if Ethan figures it out? Lila's response, he won't. He's too trusting. Besides, I need to know how he'll react under pressure. What if something real happens, and he just stands there like a deer in headlights? I can't be married to a man who won't fight for me. Riley, but hiring an actor. What if someone recognizes Chad? Lila, nobody knows him here. He's from Portland, and he needs the money. Plus, he's exactly the type that would make Ethan jealous, if Ethan's capable of jealousy. There it was. Chad wasn't a crazy ex or a stalker. He was a hired actor, paid to crash my wedding and create drama so Lila could evaluate my response. The recording device was just the cherry on top of her psychological experiment. But the emails got worse. 2 days before the wedding, Lila wrote to Riley, "I'm having second thoughts about marrying him at all. He's stable and reliable, but is that enough? Sometimes I feel like I'm settling," Riley's response. "Then why go through with it?" Lila, "Because if he passes the test, if he shows some fire, some passion, then maybe there's hope. If not, well, at least I'll know where I stand." I sat back in my chair, processing this. My wife had married me conditionally. The wedding wasn't a celebration of our love. It was a final exam. I kept digging and found the smoking gun in her text messages. A conversation with Chad from 2 days ago. Chad, "So I just need to interrupt the ceremony and claim we have a history?" Lila, "Right. Be dramatic, but not threatening. I want to see if Ethan will stand up for me or just freeze." Chad, "What if he tries to fight me?" Lila, "He won't. Trust me." Chad, "And you'll pay me the other half after?" Lila, "As soon as it's over. The payment. I found that too. A Venmo transaction for $500 sent to Chad Ramsey yesterday evening. The memo read, 'Great performance.' I copied everything to a secure drive, then started researching Chad. Social media made it easy. Chad Ramsey, 29, personal trainer at Fit Zone Gym in Portland. His Instagram was full of shirtless selfies and motivational quotes about grinding and staying alpha. He was exactly the kind of guy who'd take money to crash a stranger's wedding, but there was more. Recent photos showed him with a woman I didn't recognize at first. Then I looked closer and realized it was Lila. The photos were taken at restaurants, at a beach, at what looked like his apartment. They were dated over the past 2 months. My wife hadn't just hired an actor to test me. She'd been having an affair with him. I spent the morning documenting everything, creating a timeline, and building a case file that would make Mick proud. By the time I was done, I had proof of infidelity, manipulation, and fraud. The question was, what was I going to do about it? The old Ethan would have confronted her immediately, would have demanded explanations and apologies, would have probably ended up in marriage counseling, trying to work through our issues. But the old Ethan hadn't been secretly recorded and psychologically evaluated by his own wife. The old Ethan hadn't discovered that his marriage was a sham before the honeymoon phase even started. The new Ethan was going to be much more creative. I started with surveillance. If Lila was still seeing Chad, I wanted proof. I installed a GPS tracker on her car, a small device I normally use to help customers locate stolen laptops. I set up what I told her were security cameras around the house, explaining that the wedding crasher incident had made me nervous about our safety. She actually praised me for being proactive. The cameras were real, but they weren't for security. They were for intelligence gathering. I also cloned her phone. While she was in the shower that evening, I connected it to a device that copied all her data in real time. From now on, every text, every call, every photo would be automatically backed up to my secure server. "How was the crisis management meeting?" I asked when she came downstairs for dinner. "Exhausting," she said, settling into her chair. "Everyone wanted to know about yesterday. I had to convince them it was just some random crazy person. Must have been stressful." It was. But I think I handled it well. Sometimes these situations can actually improve your reputation if you manage them right. I nodded, thinking about how she was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Over the next week, I watched and waited. The GPS tracker showed regular trips to Portland, always during her supposed work hours. The phone clone revealed constant communication with Chad, messages that ranged from logistics, "meet me at the usual place," to intimate, "can't wait to see you again." But the most damning evidence came from the security cameras. On Thursday afternoon, while I was supposedly at work, Chad came to our house. My house. They spent 3 hours in my bedroom, and the audio pickup caught every detail. I watched the footage that night, after Lila had gone to sleep. Seeing your wife with another man in your own bed is the kind of experience that changes you at a molecular level. But what changed me more was listening to their conversation afterward. "When are you going to tell him?" Chad asked. "Tell him what?" "That you're leaving him. That this whole marriage thing was a mistake." Lila was quiet for a moment. "I'm not sure I am." "Leaving him, I mean." "What do you mean?" I thought that's what this was about. It's complicated. Ethan's useful. He's stable. He makes good money. He doesn't ask too many questions. Maybe I can have both. Both? You for excitement, him for security? Lots of women do it. Chad laughed, but it sounded uncertain. And what if he finds out? He won't. Like I said, he doesn't ask questions. He's not the suspicious type. Wrong again, sweetheart. I turned off the monitor and went to bed, lying next to my wife and listening to her breathe. She had no idea that her useful husband was planning something that would make her wedding test look like amateur hour. The next morning, I called Mick. "I need a favor," I said. "Name it." "I need you to help me destroy some people's lives." There was a pause. "Legal destruction, I hope?" "Completely legal, but very, very thorough." "When do we start?" Mick came over that Saturday morning while Lila was at her yoga class, which, according to the GPS tracker, was actually Chad's apartment. We sat in my basement office, surrounded by computer equipment and the evidence I'd gathered. "Jesus, Ethan," Mick said, scrolling through the photos and messages. "She really did a number on you. The question is, what do we do about it?" Mick leaned back in his chair. "Divorce lawyer. Take her for everything she's worth. This evidence would destroy her in court." "Too simple," I said. "Besides, she'd just play the victim." Poor Lila, married to a controlling husband who spied on her. She's good at spinning stories. It's literally her job. "So what are you thinking?" I pulled up Chad's social media profiles. "I'm thinking we start with the weak link." Chad's an idiot who posts his entire life online. Look at this. I showed Mick a series of posts from the past month. Chad at expensive restaurants, Chad showing off new gym equipment, Chad posing next to a motorcycle he'd apparently just bought. All of it funded by his side business as Lila's boy toy. "He's also a personal trainer," I continued. "His reputation is everything. His clients trust him to be professional, discreet, focused on their fitness goals. What do you think would happen if they found out he was sleeping with married clients? Mick grinned. I think his business would suffer. Exactly. And if his business suffers, he becomes less attractive to women who are looking for excitement and stability. We spent the morning planning Chad's downfall. Mick had contacts throughout the fitness industry, and I had technical skills that could make information appear anywhere I wanted it to appear. The first strike was simple but effective. I created a series of fake Yelp and Google reviews for FitZone Gym, all mentioning Chad by name. The reviews were carefully crafted to sound legitimate while raising serious concerns. Chad R. Seemed more interested in my personal life than my fitness goals. Asked a lot of inappropriate questions about my marriage and whether I was satisfied at home. Made me very uncomfortable. Saw trainer Chad with a client in a compromising position after hours. Very unprofessional. Management should investigate. Chad R. offered special training sessions at his apartment. When I declined, he became pushy and inappropriate. Would not recommend. Within 24 hours, the reviews were live and Chad's rating had dropped significantly. But that was just the beginning. Mick's part was more direct. He visited FitZone Gym, posing as a potential client, and struck up conversations with other trainers and regular members. He mentioned, casually, that he'd heard Chad was involved in some kind of drama with a married woman. He didn't provide details. He didn't need to. In a small fitness community, rumors spread faster than protein shake recipes. By Monday, Chad was getting looks. By Tuesday, his manager was asking questions. By Wednesday, 2 of his regular clients had canceled their sessions. I monitored his social media and watched his posts become increasingly desperate. The confident alpha male persona was cracking under pressure. He posted motivational quotes about haters and staying strong, but his engagement was dropping. His comments section filled with questions and speculation. The best part was watching Lila try to figure out what was happening. Her text messages to Chad showed growing concern. Lila, what's going on at the gym? You seem stressed. Chad, some asshole is spreading rumors about me. Probably a jealous client or something. Lila, what kind of rumors? Chad, that I'm sleeping with married clients. It's bullshit, but people are believing it. Lila, can you trace it back to anyone? Chad, no, it's all anonymous online stuff. But it's killing my business. I could practically hear the wheels turning in Lila's head. She was smart enough to wonder if the rumors were connected to our marriage, but not smart enough to realize how much I actually knew. Meanwhile, I was preparing the next phase. Chad's financial problems were about to get much worse. I'd discovered that Chad was operating his personal training business partially off the books. He was reporting some income to the IRS, but keeping cash payments secret. It's a common practice among personal trainers, but it's also tax fraud. I didn't report him to the IRS. That would have been too obvious and potentially illegal on my part. Instead, I made sure the right information found its way to the right people through perfectly legal channels. I created a fake client profile and booked a session with Chad. During our meeting, I paid in cash and made sure to ask about his cash discount policy. I recorded the conversation. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state, so recording my own conversation was perfectly legal. Chad, desperate for money due to his declining business, was happy to offer a significant discount for cash payments that wouldn't appear on any official records. I then sent the recording anonymously to FitZone Gym's corporate office, along with documentation of Chad's online claims about his income and lifestyle. Corporate gyms hate tax fraud because it can implicate them in illegal activity. Chad was fired within a week. The firing was the final straw. Without his job, Chad couldn't afford his apartment, his motorcycle payments, or his expensive lifestyle. He also couldn't afford to be Lila's exciting boy toy anymore. Their text conversations became increasingly strained. Chad, I need help. I'm about to lose everything. Lila, I can't give you money. Ethan would notice. Chad, then what am I supposed to do? Lila, figure it out. This is temporary. Things will get better. Chad, easy for you to say. You're not the one losing everything. But Lila was about to lose everything too. She just didn't know it yet. The beauty of destroying Chad first was that it served multiple purposes. It eliminated Lila's support system, it created stress in their relationship, and it demonstrated that actions have consequences. But most importantly, it was practice. Destroying Chad had been easy because he was careless and stupid. Lila was going to be much more challenging. She was smart, manipulative, and had a professional reputation to maintain. But she also had more to lose, which meant she was going to fall much harder. I spent the evening reviewing my evidence and planning the next phase. Lila was in the living room, watching TV and texting furiously with someone. Probably Chad, based on her frustrated expressions. Everything okay? I asked, settling onto the couch beside her. Just work drama, she said, not looking up from her phone. Want to talk about it? It's complicated. You wouldn't understand. I nodded sympathetically. Well, if you need anything, just let me know. We're a team now, right? She finally looked at me, and for a moment I saw something like guilt in her eyes. Right. A team. If only she knew that her teammate was about to bench her permanently. 2 weeks after Chad's professional destruction, Lila was becoming increasingly difficult to live with. She was stressed about her failing affair, frustrated by Chad's financial problems, and starting to suspect that her carefully constructed double life was falling apart. She was also getting sloppy. On a Thursday evening, she left her laptop open while she went to take a shower. I found an email draft she'd been working on, a message to her boss requesting a leave of absence to deal with personal issues. She was planning to run away with Chad, assuming he could get back on his feet. That's when I realized I needed to accelerate my timeline. If Lila disappeared, my revenge would be incomplete. I needed her here, in Millbrook, where everyone could watch her fall. I called Mick. Phase 2 starts tomorrow. What's the target? Her job, her reputation, and her social circle. I want her isolated and unemployed by the end of the month. That's ambitious. What's the plan? I explained what I had in mind. Mick listened without interruption, occasionally whistling softly at the more devious elements. You know, he said when I was finished, I'm starting to think you missed your calling. You should have been a spy or something. Too late for career changes, but it's not too late for justice. Lila worked as a PR manager for the city of Millbrook, handling public communications, crisis management, and media relations. It was a position that required absolute trust, discretion, and ethical behavior. It was also a position that could be destroyed by the right kind of scandal. I started by researching her work history, looking for vulnerabilities. What I found was a pattern of minor ethical violations that, individually, seemed insignificant but collectively painted a picture of someone who bent rules for personal gain. She'd used city resources for personal projects, including printing wedding invitations on the city's high-end printer. She'd accepted gifts from contractors who did business with the city. Nothing expensive enough to be illegal, but enough to raise questions about conflicts of interest. She'd also used her position to get favorable coverage for her friends' businesses in city publications. None of this was criminal, but it was all against city policy. And it was all documented in emails, receipts, and public records. But I needed something bigger, something that would create immediate consequences. That's when I remembered the wedding test recording. Lila had recorded our private conversation without my consent. In Massachusetts, that's illegal when done without permission from all parties involved. But more importantly, she'd done it while representing the city at a public event. Our wedding had been covered by the local newspaper as a social event, and she'd been identified as a city employee. I had a plan. First, I needed to get the recording device back. Lila had hidden it in her home office after the wedding, probably as a trophy or insurance policy. While she was at work, I searched her desk and found it in a locked drawer. The lock was electronic, but I'd installed the system myself and had the master code. The device contained not just the wedding recording, but several other conversations she'd recorded without consent. Phone calls with contractors, meetings with her boss, even conversations with Chad where she discussed confidential city business. I copied everything, then put the device back exactly where I'd found it. Next, I needed to create a scandal that would force the city to investigate her conduct. I couldn't directly leak the information. That would raise questions about how I'd obtained it. Instead, I needed someone else to discover it. That's where Mrs. Hanley came in. Mrs. Hanley was more than just a nosy neighbor. She was a retired journalist who'd worked for the Millbrook Gazette for 30 years. She had contacts throughout the city government and a nose for corruption that hadn't dulled in retirement. I invited her over for coffee, ostensibly to discuss the security concerns I'd been having since the wedding crasher incident. It's just so strange, I told her, sitting in my kitchen with security camera footage playing on my laptop. A complete stranger knowing so much about our personal business makes you wonder how he got that information. Mrs. Hanley leaned forward, interested. What kind of information? Personal things, private conversations. It's like someone had been recording us or something. I let that seed germinate while showing her more footage, carefully edited to remove any evidence of Chad's actual relationship with Lila, while highlighting his suspicious knowledge of our private affairs. You know, Mrs. Hanley said, there have been rumors about some city employees using their positions inappropriately. Nothing concrete, but whispers. Really? What kind of whispers? Oh, the usual small-town politics. Conflicts of interest, misuse of resources, that sort of thing. But if someone was actually recording private conversations... She trailed off, clearly thinking. I didn't push. I didn't need to. Mrs. Hanley's journalist instincts were taking over. Within a week, she'd started her own investigation. She filed Freedom of Information Act requests for Lila's email communications, expense reports, and meeting minutes. She interviewed city employees, contractors, and anyone else who'd had dealings with the PR department. What she found was exactly what I'd expected her to find: a pattern of minor violations that, when viewed collectively, suggested serious ethical problems. But the real bombshell came when Mrs. Hanley discovered that Lila had been using city equipment to record conversations without consent. She'd been doing it for months, supposedly for quality assurance purposes, but without following proper legal protocols. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. City PR manager under investigation for ethics violations was the headline in the Millbrook Gazette. The article detailed the various policy violations, the illegal recordings, and the questions surrounding Lila's professional conduct. By noon, Lila was suspended pending a full investigation. By evening, she was trending on local social media as residents shared their own stories of questionable interactions with the city's PR department. I was at work when she called, crying, "Ethan, something terrible has happened. Someone's been spreading lies about me at work. I've been suspended." "What? That's awful. What kind of lies?" "They're saying I violated ethics policies, that I recorded people without permission. It's all false, but they're treating it like it's true." "Who would do something like that?" "I don't know, but someone's been investigating me, going through my files, talking to people. It's like they have a personal vendetta, if only she knew." "I'm sure it will all get sorted out," I said. "The truth always comes out eventually." "I hope so. I can't believe this is happening." That evening she was a wreck. She'd spent the day fielding calls from reporters, colleagues, and friends who'd heard about the investigation. Her social media accounts were flooded with comments and questions. Her carefully maintained professional image was crumbling in real time. "Maybe we should go away for a while," she said over dinner. "Take a vacation, let this blow over." "Can you do that while you're under investigation?" "Probably not, but I can't stay here and watch my reputation get destroyed by lies." "Are they lies, though?" The question hung in the air between us. Lila looked at me with something approaching panic. "Of course they're lies. How can you even ask that?" "I'm just saying, if they're lies, then the investigation will prove that. If they're not..." I shrugged. "They're lies, Ethan. I would never violate people's privacy or misuse city resources. You know me better than that, but I did know her better than that. I knew exactly what she was capable of, and so did half the town by now." The investigation took 3 weeks. During that time, Lila's world systematically collapsed. Friends stopped calling. Invitations dried up. Even her parents, the Pattersons, started distancing themselves from the scandal. Chad, meanwhile, had disappeared entirely. With no job and no prospects, he'd moved back in with his parents in another state. His last text to Lila was brutal in its honesty. "I can't deal with your drama anymore. Find someone else to solve your problems." When the investigation concluded, Lila was terminated for cause. The city found evidence of multiple policy violations, misuse of resources, and illegal recording activities. They also discovered that she'd been sharing confidential information with unauthorized individuals, namely Chad, during their pillow talk sessions. The termination was front-page news. City Fire's PR manager for ethics violations was accompanied by a photo of Lila leaving City Hall with a box of her personal belongings. That night, she sat at our kitchen table, staring at the newspaper. "My career is over," she said quietly. "You can rebuild. Start somewhere new." Who's going to hire someone who was fired for ethics violations? This will follow me everywhere. She was right, of course. In the age of Google, professional scandals were permanent, but she still didn't understand the full scope of what was happening to her. She was about to find out. 3 days after Lila's termination, I received an unexpected visitor. Riley showed up at my door on a Saturday morning, looking haggard and desperate. "We need to talk," she said. I invited her in, curious about what Lila's co-conspirator wanted to discuss. We sat in my living room, where hidden cameras captured every word. "Lila's in bad shape," Riley began. "She's talking about leaving town, starting over somewhere else. That might be for the best. Fresh start and all that. Ethan, I know you're angry about the wedding thing. I know you figured it out." I raised an eyebrow. "Figured what out?" "Don't play dumb. The timing of everything that's happened to Chad, to Lila. It's not coincidental. You've been orchestrating this." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. Riley was smarter than I'd given her credit for. "That's quite an accusation. You're suggesting I somehow manipulated a city investigation and destroyed a man's career. I fix computers for a living, Riley. I'm not exactly a criminal mastermind. But you are angry. And you have every right to be. What we did was wrong." "What you did? She took a deep breath. The wedding test. It was my idea originally. I convinced Lila to do it. Why? Because I thought you weren't good enough for her. You're too passive, too accepting. I thought if she saw how you'd react under pressure, she'd realize she could do better. And now? Now I realize I was wrong. About you being passive, anyway. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where Mrs. Hanley was walking her dog. She waved, and I waved back. You want to know the truth, Riley? You're right. I did orchestrate all of this. Chad's downfall, Lila's investigation, all of it. She went pale. How? Very carefully, very legally, and very thoroughly. I turned back to face her. Your friend recorded my private conversation without my consent. She committed a crime. She also cheated on me with the man she hired to test my loyalty. She manipulated me, lied to me, and treated our marriage like a psychological experiment. So you destroyed her life? I exposed her life. Everything that's happened to her is a direct consequence of her own actions. I just made sure those actions had appropriate consequences. Riley was quiet for a long moment. What do you want? Money? An apology? What will it take for you to stop? Stop what? I haven't done anything illegal. I haven't even done anything unethical. I simply made sure the truth came to light. The truth? I walked to my desk and pulled out a thick folder. The truth about your friend's affair. The truth about her illegal recordings. The truth about her professional misconduct. The truth about the fake wedding crash you two orchestrated. I opened the folder and showed her photos, transcripts, and documentation. Riley's face went white as she realized the scope of evidence I'd collected. This is everything, Riley. Every lie, every deception, every crime, and it's all admissible in court. Court? Divorce court, where I'll be filing papers on Monday morning. She stared at the evidence, then looked up at me. You're going to take her for everything. Actually, no. I'm going to give her exactly what she deserves. Nothing. Riley stood up abruptly. I have to warn her. Go ahead. But warn her about what? That her husband has evidence of her crimes? That her actions have consequences? That the man she thought was too passive to fight for her turned out to be someone who fights very differently than she expected? Riley headed for the door, then stopped. You know, I always thought you were boring. Turns out you're actually terrifying. Only to people who deserve to be terrified. After Riley left, I called Mick. It's time for the final act, I said. What do you need? I need you to be a witness, and I need you to bring a camera. That evening, Lila came home from another fruitless job interview. She'd been trying to find work for weeks, but word of her termination had spread throughout the local professional community. No one wanted to hire someone with her reputation. How did it go? I asked. Terrible. They'd already heard about the city thing. The interview was over before it started. She slumped into a chair, looking defeated. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Lila, we need to talk. Something in my tone must have warned her. She looked up, suddenly alert. About what? About Chad? About the wedding? About everything. I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much she could still deny. I don't know what you mean. I pulled out my laptop and opened a video file. This is security footage from our bedroom, recorded 2 weeks ago. The video showed Chad entering our house, going upstairs with Lila, and emerging 3 hours later. The audio captured their entire conversation, including Lila's admission that she was using me for security while seeing Chad for excitement. Lila watched in stunned silence as her affair played out on screen. There's more, I said, opening another file. Text messages, emails, financial records, GPS tracking data. I have documentation of your entire relationship with Chad, going back to before our wedding. I opened another file. This is the recording you made of my reaction to Chad's performance. The performance you paid him $500 to give. Her face went through a series of expressions: shock, fear, anger, and finally, calculation. Ethan, I can explain. No need. I understand perfectly. You tested me to see if I was worthy of your love. Well, congratulations. You got your answer. I stood up and walked to the window. Mick was parked across the street, camera ready. I failed your test, didn't I? I didn't fight for you. I didn't get jealous or angry or possessive. I just stood there and let it happen. That's not... But here's the thing, Lila. You misunderstood what kind of man you married. You thought I was passive. You thought I was weak. You thought I would just accept whatever you did to me. I turned back to face her. You were wrong. I opened a final folder on the laptop. This is what I've been doing for the past month. Chad's destroyed career, that was me. Your ethics investigation, that was me. The end of your professional reputation, that was me. She stared at the screen, seeing the full scope of my campaign against her and Chad. You want to know how I fight for what's mine? This is how. Not with fists or shouting or dramatic gestures, with intelligence, patience, and absolutely ruthless execution. Lila's face had gone completely pale. You destroyed my entire life. No, you destroyed your entire life. I just made sure you faced the consequences. She stood up, shaking with rage. You bastard. You manipulative, vindictive bastard. Says the woman who hired an actor to crash our wedding so she could record my reaction and evaluate my worthiness as a husband. That's different. How? Because I was trying to save our marriage. I was trying to make sure we were right for each other. By cheating on me with the man you hired to test me? She had no answer for that. I closed the laptop. I'm filing for divorce on Monday. You can contest it if you want, but I have enough evidence to destroy you in court. Or you can sign the papers quietly and try to rebuild your life somewhere else. And if I don't? Then I release everything. Every photo, every recording, every document. I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of person you are. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing her options. You've changed, she said finally. No, I haven't. You just never bothered to really know who you married. You saw what you wanted to see, a safe, boring, controllable man who would provide stability while you had your fun on the side. I walked to the door and opened it. Your bags are packed and in the garage. Riley's waiting in her car to take you to wherever you're going next. You're throwing me out? I'm giving you a choice. Leave quietly, or leave in handcuffs when I press charges for the illegal recordings. She looked around the house, our house, one last time. I loved you, she said. No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me, the security I represented, the backup plan I provided. But you never loved me. She walked toward the garage, then stopped. What if I had passed your test? What if I had been faithful, if the wedding thing had been innocent? Then we'd probably be happy right now. But you didn't, and it wasn't, so here we are. She nodded and walked out of my life. I watched from the window as Riley's car pulled away, taking Lila to whatever uncertain future awaited her. Then I called Mick. It's over, I said. How do you feel? I thought about it. Like I passed a test I didn't know I was taking. 6 months later, I received a postcard from somewhere in Florida. No return address, just a beach scene and a single line. You won. I threw it in the trash. This had never been about winning or losing. It had been about justice, consequences, and making sure that people who manipulate others face appropriate punishment. Lila had tested my character and found me wanting by her standards, so I tested hers by mine. She failed. The end, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching,